Welcome, everyone. What a wonderful evening we have ahead of us. My name's Valerie Kaler, and if you haven't seen me at the shop in the last few days, and I haven't seen you, I just want to say hi to all of you out there in the United States while we have this wonderful conversation with the delightful Ann Patchett. So before we get started, there's some housekeeping. If you're new to Zoom, Ann and I cannot see you. And we cannot hear you. So if you have questions, and we would love to take your questions, down on the bottom toolbar, there's a Q&A, and that is where you should post your questions. And if you want to like a question because you have the same one, please feel free to do the thumbs up. If you want to post anything about this event today on social media, we'd love for you to tag us at Blue Willow Books. We'd love to stay in touch. So as a reminder, we expect all of our participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Finally, you can always support us by buying the Dutch House in paperback. Here it is, this lovely new edition that just came out today with these gorgeous French flaps. Kathy will drop the link for the purchase in our chat. We do have beautiful book plates that Anne has signed and sent us. So that's it for me, and I can see that there are some people that remember me meeting Anne, actually chasing her down at BEA. Yes, I saw the comment. I did chase her down. So Ann Patchett, the author of many books, The Dutch House, Bel Canto, and also the co-owner of Parnassus Books in Nashville, Tennessee, a lovely bookstore that I've had an opportunity to visit. And I'm thrilled to be here in conversation with you, Ann, tonight. So welcome.
Hello. Did that work?
Yeah.
Look, here we are.
Here we are.
Thanks
and
for
you're
having
at home now. You're not at the bookstore.
I'm home. It's really hard to do these things. Are you in the bookstore?
No. The bookstore would not be nearly this lovely. It's boxes everywhere.
Like, what is up with my hair? That's the problem with doing these events, is you're like, what is up with my hair? The bookstore is always loud, even if there's nobody in it.
Yeah.
The phone's ringing and dogs are barking and whatever. So
yes. And people asking you questions and things like that. So yeah, so we're thrilled that you're here tonight. So some of you might not know this, but Anne, you were supposed to come visit us back in April on Indie Bookstore Day. You were on your way to New Zealand for a book tour.
Right. That's right.
Yes, you were to visit us. And that didn't happen. We were closed. You were closed. We were all closed, at least for a while. And so we didn't get a chance to talk about the Dutch House when you were to come to Houston. So now tonight, on the day that the Dutch House in paperback right here debuts, I'm thrilled to have you here tonight to talk about it.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. There's some things about this brave new world that, are kind of nice. And the idea that I can go and visit all of these bookstores and then put my pajamas on and go right to bed right across the hall. Wow. It's really fabulous.
It is nice. It is very nice to be able to do that. So I have a couple of things I want to say when we talk. I did just read that lovely article in Harper's Magazine over the weekend. Interestingly enough, sent to me by my brother-in-law, who said, you should read this article about Ann Patchett in Harper's. Her conversation with her store employee, Nikki, sounds like you and one of your staffers. And I said, how interesting, you should send me that article. Thank you for sending it, because I'm going to be talking with Ann on Tuesday. Of course,
he didn't know.
He didn't know. And he said, oh, of course you are. Of course you're going to be talking with Ann on Tuesday. So you had some really interesting things to say. So Dutch House. I just also first want to say that I listened to it. Tom Hanks, what a wonderful, wonderful. I couldn't wait to get up and walk in the morning, because he was so good. He was Danny at 12. He was Danny at 50. He was perfect. But the thing that stopped me short on my walk was his wife's mother, whose name is Julie Norcross. And I just stopped short. I said, I know Julie Norcross. I've been to her house. She lives up near Petoskey, Michigan. Oh my goodness. And I had to laugh. Of course, I emailed Matt who I served on the board with at the ABA board. And he said, I'm glad Anne didn't say anything bad about my family since she named the family the Norcrosses. But actually, Julie is my adopted mom. When I visited her house, that house with those books and that view, I was like, I am now your adopted sister, Matt. I now live with your parents.
Yeah, exactly. Bill and Julie are absolutely my heart. And really, McLean and Eakin is probably my favorite bookstore in the country. I remember so well the first time I was sent there on book tour, and I was like, are you out of your mind? I have to fly to Detroit. And it's so impossible to get to. It's this huge drive. And it's just paradise. And Julie is the warm, she's like Meryl Streep. She actually really looks like Meryl Streep.
She does. Yeah.
She's so fantastic. And when I wanted to write them in as characters in the book, I finished the book. I didn't tell them. I finished the book. And then I wrote to Julie and said, I want to send you the manuscript. I want you to read it. And if you're okay with this, I'll leave it in. If you like it, if you don't, I'll just, do search and replace and change the characters' names. And they were very happy about it.
Yeah.
So it worked out well.
What a wonderful book. So in the book, you, I don't talk about the house because the house is such an integral character in the book. And you've written about family before and you've written about place before, but I don't recall any where the house actually was one of the characters. So what was the impetus for that?
I'm thinking, and actually in Patron Saint of Liars, which was the very first book, and it takes place in a home for unwed mothers. I think the house was really a character. The impetus to have the house be a character is the house is the outward manifestation of our inner lives. It's how we show the world how successful we are. It's kind of our exterior pride. And also, sometimes it's the truth and sometimes it's incredibly false. And it's just a really, really interesting metaphor. And especially for me, because this story began as a story about a woman who is the mother, Elna, who couldn't bridge the gulf between being very poor and very rich. This book starts right at the end of the Second World War, when there really wasn't an American middle class, or it was just at the beginning of American middle class. So people were either poor or they were freakishly rich. There was almost nothing in between. And it seemed to me that jump would be so impossible to make in one lifetime, as opposed to over many generations. And one of the characters just can't make the transition. And so all of that in my mind is tied up in a house, or the house is the best symbol. I lived in a little tiny house, and now I live in this giant opulent mansion. And not only does the house come into their life, they buy it with all of the stuff in it. I mean, like the clothes in the drawers, the jewelry in the jewelry box, everything is in that house. The paintings on the wall, which play a big part of the story. So yeah, it was just a great metaphor. I watched Howard's End recently, which I had read the book and I had seen the movie years ago, but I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, for whatever reason, I watched Howard's End and I thought, oh my gosh, I really cribbed a lot from Howard's End without knowing it. But that obsessive love for a house, and to have your identity wrapped up in a house.
Yes, and she just could not deal with that. But we don't really hear from Elna from the beginning till almost really to the very end. So it's really Danny's story and Maeve's story. I mean, they're the ones, and even in the house, I love the scenes where they go back and they sit in the car and they just look at the house.
Yeah.
And she remembers Danny remembers that was some of their best conversations. That was a kind of when they were the closest, was they were enclosed in this car, they're staring at this house, and they're talking about their lives.
Right. I don't want to give too much away for people who haven't read the book, but this is really a story about people who can't let go of their old hurt. Danny and Maeve actually, they suffer a grave injustice, but they are fine. They go on and they have happy lives, and they're smart and they're funny and they're very fulfilled, but they can't let go of the past. And so they keep going back to this house. It's like they stalk the house, not
Yeah,
the people in the house. They don't really want to ever see the people in the house, but the house itself, they cannot let go of, because again, it is both the thing itself and also the representation of a better time.
right. And of their father and their mother, but really of their father.
Right.
Danny and his father are very close. Danny spends a lot of time with his father, maybe more time than some other children might have spent with a father. And he takes him out on Saturday to go pick up the rent. And I thought it was very interesting that Danny, although Maeve wants him to be a doctor, Danny ends up doing what his father does. He ends
Yeah,
up,
real estate and development.
yeah,
Yes. And when I was researching the book and when I was writing it, that was the very hardest part for me, was writing about real estate and development and people who were obsessed with houses and property, and how do you make money if you don't have money? It's really interesting. People will say to me all the time, well, how did you write from the point of view of a man? Or, what character was the hardest part for you to write? And I always think, well, it wasn't the characters. The people were fine. The circumstances were really tough and took a lot of research, but especially Cyril's job, Cyril being the father, and Danny's job. When Danny gets into real estate later in life in New York, I was so stumped by that. I had to meet with so many people and interview them just to try to figure out, what New York real estate was about in the 70s. I certainly had no idea. I had no idea that you could buy a brownstone in Harlem for $1,200 in the 70s. You had to take the tax bill, but you could buy a nice old burnt out brownstone, which now would be worth, I don't know, $7 million or something like that.
you say in your Harper's article, you were talking um, about the people and how you can do that. It's the harder part to get the situation, but you say that people aren't characters, no matter how often we tell them they are. Conversations are not dialogue, and the action of our days don't add up to plot. And you are a wonderful character writer as well as plot, but characters, I mean, you just spring them up, and we can just picture them when we read your words. We can picture those people in our head. That's that magic that those of us who are readers love. Do you want to speak a little bit about the characters in this book, and any characters, and where I don't know, you talk, you're the author.
Well, and let me say first, let me just explain to people what the Harper's article is. It's an unspeakably long essay that is the cover story of Harper's Magazine. It is 20,000 words. It was 60 typewritten pages. It never occurred to me that somebody would want to publish this thing. It's going to be in a book. My next book is a book of essays that will come out at Thanksgiving. And the book is called These Precious Days. And the essay is called These Precious Days. And I started having a conversation with a guy who turned out to be the editor at Harper's. And he said, do you have anything? I was like, yeah, but it's way too long. You're not going to want it. He said, oh, no, we love long. We do long. And I sent it to him. And that is what I'm right in the middle of right now. I have published a lot of things in my life, a lot of books and a lot of essays and a lot of articles. I have never had an experience like this. It is like my full-time job right now, just dealing with this thing. It has gone around the world 6 times, and if you go to Harper's Magazine, if you go to the website, it's there. And
Yes.
there's no paywall, there's no nothing. And you can read it if you are in the mood to read one unbelievably long, super personal essay, in which I do talk about writing, although that's not ultimately what it's about. It's about a very serendipitous friendship and living at home during COVID. But it is to some extent just how we put stories together, and making up characters, and trying to make sure that people are believable, that the characters in my novels, I want them to act like people that I know in real life. um, People hold fictional characters to much higher standards than they hold their friends and family to. It's the best example of that, I always think, is Bel Canto. And so many people are just, people bring so much rage to me about the end of that book. Why did they get married? Why did they get married? They weren't in love. And I was like, oh my God, have you never met two people who got married for reasons other than being in love? But this is a novel. They're supposed to be passionately in love. No, no, novels can be very much like life. Um, the best example from what you just read, though, was about dialogue. And when I was in my 20s, I used to date a guy who was a narcotics DA in New York, and he would have phone taps on drug dealers. If you have a phone tap on a drug dealer, what you get is 10 hours of phone conversations of the girlfriend who's watching a soap opera with her mom over the phone, or with her sister or her girlfriend. And we would read these transcripts of the phone taps looking for information about drugs, which there was nothing. It was information about, you need diapers, did you get the milk? Oh my gosh, look what she's doing on the soap opera. And I thought, the way people speak to one another is not dialogue. The way people speak to one another is, in fact, unconscionably boring. Dialogue is going into 10 hours of phone tapping and with tweezers, pulling out the 50 words that can give you the feel of what it's like to be a drug dealer's girlfriend, stuck in an apartment all day, the loneliness and the boredom, without actually making the reader feel bored. So you've got to just like get little mosaic tiles and piece them together and make a person out of that. Otherwise, you bore the socks off your reader.
I like that you mentioned in Bel Canto, you don't remember this, but the first time I actually met you was here in Houston. You spoke to a charity luncheon event, and I was asked to come down and sell books. And during the awful,
Wait. Was it the high school? The
no,
alumni
after
mothers?
high school, it was at the country club.
No, but was
Yes,
the event
yes,
the
yes.
alumni mothers for the Well-Heeled High School? Yes, and I will stop that conversation right there. Yes, that was the single strangest event
It
I
was.
have ever done in my entire professional life. Yes,
I'm not going to mention it in case there's anybody on here because they probably do remember this. Maybe not. I don't know.
it's not that it was bad. It was just super strange because I wound up talking, I believe, for 2.5 minutes.
I think so.
All the programs ran long, and then that's what they had.
And you said a very interesting thing that night that I'd never forget.
2.5 minutes.
And I've repeated it 1,000 times. Is someone asked you during what I like to call the awful Q&A part, but sometimes sometimes someone comes up with a really interesting question. There's some great ones that we're going to get to here. But someone asked, why did you tell us the end of the story at the beginning? And I thought, what kind of question is that? It's just the either. But you gave a very good answer. You said, I didn't want you to speed through the book trying to figure out how it was going to end. I wanted you to read it as a journey. And
Yeah.
I think about that when I read. Don't speed through the book. Think about it as a journey.
You know, I'm going to date myself wildly. I am 57, and I call it the love story principle. Now, probably a lot of you never saw Love Story, that cultural touchstone of the 70s. But it begins with Ryan O'Neal sitting in a baseball diamond saying, "What can you say about Jenny? She loved Bach and Beethoven and me. Jenny's dead." And then you open to the scene where he meets Jenny for the first time. So Jenny's going to die, right? And
Right?
the whole point of saying that up front is I am going to pay attention to Jenny's life and not frantically wonder whether or not Jenny's going to die. Jenny is going to die. We're all going to die. So
Exactly.
how do we train ourselves to pay attention to the moment? So it was thanks to Love Story, thanks to Ryan O'Neal, that I got that moment in Bel Canto.
Yes, you did. You did. And are you thinking that when you're writing? Are you thinking, okay, it's the journey, it's the journey. Don't speed up. Don't, give it time.
Well, I mean, are you talking about when I'm writing in terms of how I work out a plot, or actually physically when I'm writing?
The plot, I don't even know how you write. Do you write by longhand or do you type?
No, I mean, I type, but I have this thing that I always say, I'm a dog on the wrong side of the door, which means that when I am in the middle of a book, I just want to be finished with the book. I just want to be out, out, out. I want to be done. I want to be done with this thing. And then I'm done and I'm like, oh, I don't have a book. I want a book. Oh, I've got to come up with an idea for a book. I really miss my book. So that is something as I get older and old, that I think a lot about. That, okay, right now I'm not writing. I just turned a book in like 5 days ago. Enjoy it, right? I need to make sure that I'm not getting all restless and put out with myself, but say, this is a beautiful moment and I'm not writing, or I am writing. This is a beautiful moment and I am writing.
So I know we have a number of people. When we announced this, took a number of calls to people who are going to be, maybe they've already discussed it in their book club, but this is going to be the big book club book of the year, out in paperback. People are going to be discussing it. I know that there's a number of people on tonight that are going to be discussing it. So if you had your dream discussion about this book, what would you like people to talk about?
Okay, well, I'm going to say one thing about that, and I am very cautious. I in no way mean to direct any traffic from your store to mine, but if you go to the Parnassus website, I actually did a frequently asked question
Oh, that's
sheet,
great.
because we were getting people write to me and they were sending the same. Have you ever been to is the Dutch house a real house? Have you ever been there? How did you get the idea for this? And it was the same 15 questions. And so I just wrote all the answers, and it's somewhere up there on the website under Anne's blog. So there's that
That's great.
for book club people. Also, a million podcasts. I did a great podcast with Gretchen Rubin, a
Oh,
Happiness
yes.
Project,
Mhm.
that was like full on spoiler. Like they talked about everything. And I thought, this is so great. Any book club can now go listen to this podcast and know absolutely everything. And now I've completely lost your question.
No, you did. You answered it. I want people to go to your frequently asked questions, because we get questions. I get questions all the time.
Okay.
I actually still have, and this it sounds like I'm kind of stalking you maybe, but I'm not, promise, even though I've been to your bookstore. I actually this is back when the internet was just kind of coming around. I did a whole file on questions about Bel Canto and in articles. And then I had a CD of Renee Fleming that people could play. And
Nice.
we did it at our book club in the store, and then people kept asking me for it. So to this day, I still have that old paper file with all of those articles. I know. And the
Like,
CD and this whole, I mean, this is back to CD, this is not on Spotify or anything like that.
right.
So, and I remember, I think you said at some point that you had not met Renee Fleming at the time when you wrote Bel Canto.
No, I met Renee when I was on book tour for the hardback. So really, really early on, I was doing a radio show on WQXR, which is the big classical station in New York. And the woman who was interviewing me, and I was in the studio with her, was named Mary Jo Heath. And she said, one of her questions was, if you could meet any opera star, who would you want to meet? And I knew so little about opera. I just kind of put myself on a crash course so I could write the book. And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd want to meet Renee Fleming, but I don't really want to meet Renee Fleming because I've listened to her music and there's no reason to think that we should be friends because I listened to her music. And then that was that. And when we went off the air, Mary Jo said, Renee was my college roommate. And if you want to meet her, I can totally arrange that. Everybody thought that the character of Roxanne Koss was based on Renee for many reasons, but the best one was Roxanne Koss's signature aria was Rusalka's Song to the Moon by Dvorak. And I had a friend who was a great opera aficionado. And when I was working on the book, I said, pick out an aria that's going to make me look super smart. And that was what he picked out. And I didn't have any idea that that was Renee's aria. And really nobody sang Rusalka back then except for Renee. So Renee called my, her publicist called my publicist, and we met, we had lunch, and we kind of just kept cycling back around to each other for a while. And she's one of my best friends.
That's awesome. That's
It's
wonderful. What a great story.
really, it's really crazy. And I get full credit for this. I don't deserve full credit. Renee and her husband always say that I am the person who fixed them up. And while it is true that they never would have met had it not been for me, it didn't, there was a little extra step in there, but yes, I get a lot of credit for her happiness in life.
You need to take credit where credit is due. That's good.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And are any of the characters in the Dutch House based on any, are they amalgamations or your imagination or?
Wait, I'm thinking. Really, no.
Okay.
I mean, there aren't, and in other books of mine, I could say, yes, I know who that person was based on. No, those characters are really just people in my head. Yeah.
You have a
Sorry.
lot of people living in your head, I think.
Actually, there was a girl when I was in high school. The Latin teacher was Mrs. Schenker, and Mrs. Schenker's oldest daughter, Julie Schenker. When Mrs. Schenker was out, Julie Schenker would come home from college and she would teach the Latin class. And you know how when you're in 7th grade, somebody in college is just so inconceivably grown up and sophisticated and beautiful. And I went to this all girls Catholic school, and every time Julie Schenker would walk in, we were all like, oh my God, Julie Schenker. If only I could grow up to be Julie Schenker. And physically, Julie Schenker was really Maeve. She had the bright eyes and the really thick, long black hair. And she lives in my neighborhood now. And I see her like twice a week out walking dogs. And I still have not told her. I still have not come up with a way in which I would not sound like a total insane person at this late date to say, "Hey, Julie, the heroine of that novel, that was you when you were a girl." Yeah.
I bet she would love to hear it though. I bet she would. So
Someday.
there's a question here. Someone else has already had read the Harper's article. Did you ask Tom Hanks to read Dutch House or?
Yeah, I did. I know him. In fact, the reason that I know Tom is just like this. I had blurbed his book, and his publisher asked me to interview him in DC for Politics and Prose at a
Mhm.
big theater event. And who's going to say no? I'm not going to interview Tom Hanks. And so I did. And then he was interested in opening a bookstore, possibly in Santa Monica. And also, his wife, Rita Wilson, is a singer-songwriter, and she writes a lot in Nashville, because in Nashville, everybody writes together, which is so funny. And Tom and Rita come to Nashville, and I just kept hearing from him over and over again about the bookstore, and do you want to go to this concert and hear Rita sing? And we became friends. And then I finished the book, and I was like, oh, what the heck? And I just emailed him and said, hey, any interest in doing the audio for my book? And he said, oh, that sounds like fun. Send it to me, and I'll see if I connect to the narrator. And I was so shocked. It was one of those things. We have such a light, jokey exchange. It's like, that's just it. And so I was like, hey, you want to do this? I said, in fact, what I said was, hey, you were in a Carly Rae Jepsen video. Maybe you'd want to do my audiobook. And he said, yeah, sure. That sounds like fun. And he read the book, and like 3 weeks later, he did it. It was unbelievable. I never would have had the nerve to ask if I had thought there was any chance he would say yes, because it was such a huge ask to say to somebody, hey, can I have, or to say to Tom Hanks, can I have 4 days of your life on this earth? Oh, busiest person that I know. And to have him carve out that time in his schedule and do it. And people, whenever somebody says to me, I listened to the book, it makes me so happy, because it's paperback pub day, so sure, I hope you buy the paperback, but like, the book is the best I could do. That is my talent. That is the maximum amount of talent. And then with the audiobook, you have my talent, plus you've got all of Tom Hanks's talent on top of it.
It was wonderful.
And it makes it, it's just twice as good. And it's funny. I think this is a funny book.
Yes.
And everybody tells me it's so sad. But when you listen to the book, I mean, it is laugh out loud funny when you hear Tom read it.
Like I said earlier, I could just see him at 12. He just read it in a 12-year-old voice without really changing. He just did a great job of it. It's been one of our very best sellers on Libro FM, because we can't stop talking about it. And so many of us in the shop read it that way.
I love Libro FM. Hey, my dog is scratching at my door. Do you mind if I open my door and let my dog in?
Your door.
Because this is really going to be worthwhile. You'll get to see Sparky, whose picture is right there over my shoulder.
A lot of people would like to see Sparky.
Come here. Come here.
Here comes Sparky.
This is the wonder. This is the wonder of Zoom. If I had actually come to Houston,
Sparky would still be in that.
To see Sparky.
Right.
Doesn't this kind of make everything worthwhile?
Oh, look at him. I see pictures of him on the store's blog and Facebook. He's adorable. I have a store dog too.
Oh, do you? I love the fact that you're like looking at the floor.
No,
I have a store dog too.
In here, I think she's on Grandma's couch, which she's not supposed to be, but she does love
working So, I mean, why not get on the couch?
Why not get on the couch? Because guess what? She can't see me and she's talking. She's not going to get up and come see me. That's what she's thinking, that girl. Okay, we have another couple questions. So, okay, this one is very interesting. So because you talked about Renee Fleming, a lot of people remember your incredibly poignant book with Lucy Grealy, and someone is asking about that friendship and if you ever went back and revisited that later after you wrote the book.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, the answer, I guess, is no. I've never really read any of my books. And Truth and Beauty is the one book that I think, well, someday I will go back and read that. There have been some moments when I'm writing nonfiction, and I write a lot of nonfiction, I have such a hard time remembering, did I tell that story? Did I say that in a speech? Did I write it down somewhere? So there have been moments that I have flipped through Truth and Beauty because I want to see if I told some story that I'm thinking about the past in that book, or if I'm just remembering it. And that book has been a great thing for me. It's been a great source of happiness because what it means is everywhere I go, people want to talk about Lucy. And that's just it's just such a wonderful thing. She's been dead 19 years. Well, really 18 years from right now. This will be the 19th year. And I think I'm so lucky because how many people's best friends died 18 years ago, and yet you can go into a room full of strangers and somebody is always going to say to me, tell me about Lucy. How do you think about Lucy now? And what do you think she would think about all of this? And it's a really joyful thing. I mean, I think that everybody likes remembering their departed beloveds and getting to talk about them. And I do feel like it's this gift that I get that other people don't get.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about as we are edging towards your 9 o'clock hour. I want to ask you a couple of things.
No,
One,
it's
how's
edging
that?
towards my 8
Yeah.
o'clock hour because I'm on Central Time.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting. So, Anne, my son lives in Chattanooga and they are just in Eastern. So I always think of Tennessee as Eastern, but I forget that if you drive west of Chattanooga by 1 mile,
That's
you're
exactly
in Eastern.
right.
Actually, you're in Alabama and you're in Central Time. I forget that.
Do you know the writer Kevin Wilson?
Yes.
Nothing to
Yes.
See here. And Kevin is
Mhm.
one of my very best friends, and he teaches at the University of the South, which is right next to Chattanooga.
Yeah.
But Kevin and I are in the same time zone. But if he goes to the dentist in Chattanooga,
In
then
Chattanooga.
Eastern time.
Yeah. You're in Eastern Time Zone. Yes. Yes. It's what a fun town it is too. So, how's Nashville?
Well, we just got bombed. Uh, and that's been weird. The combination of having this big piece out, but also when a bomb goes off in your city, you hear from every single person you have ever been in a car with, hey, are you dead? And how are things? And was the bookstore bombed? And I'm like, what is this? So Nashville's had a really tough year. But I have to say, somebody said to me the other day, of somebody that I know in New York, she said, well, this is your September 11th. And I said, what a horrible thing to say. Of course it's not our September 11th. Nobody was killed. I mean, the only person who was killed was the person who was killing himself. And it was a mess and an inconvenience and a shame. and really, really sad, but it was not a tragedy. And I feel bizarrely like so lucky. I keep thinking, what an incredibly considerate bomber to bomb at 6:30 on Christmas morning after playing an hour-long tape telling people to evacuate. So it's had this very bizarre effect of making me feel like, aren't we lucky? Which is all you need to know about my Pollyanna-ish nature. But whereas we had all of these horrific tornadoes this spring, and 25 people in Nashville were killed in tornadoes, that was a tragedy. This is a
Yeah.
mess. So that's Nashville.
I read that wonderful article in the New York Times that I don't know how she says her last name, Margaret Rinkle? Rankle?
Margaret Rankle, who I had lunch with today.
Oh my goodness. Late migrations. Oh,
Late migrations, nothing better than late migrations.
okay. As a bookseller, what are you reading? What are you recommending? What are you reading that's coming out in 2021? I know everybody wants to know. So tell all.
All right. So the book that's coming out that there are three books that I'm so excited about that are coming out next week. George Saunders' A Swim in a Pond in the Rain, which is nonfiction in which he discusses 7 Russian short stories. He's been teaching an MFA program at Syracuse for 20 years. These are 7 lectures about 7 stories. If you are a passionate reader, if you have any interest in being a writer, if you just want to feel like you're learning something again, it cracked open something in my heart. It was just an amazing experience to read like a student again. He's teaching you how to read. It was so exciting. I'm going to be interviewing George on the 19th. I am thrilled. I adore him. The Uncollected Short Stories of Alan Gurganis, also coming out in January. And Alan is one of my favorite short story writers, and these stories are gorgeous. Love that book. In February, Chang Rae Lee has a book called My Year Abroad. Unbelievable. Have you read that yet?
I have not.
Oh,
Alice is ready. And yes.
So good. In March, Patricia Engel has a book called, gosh, wait, I'm blanking on the Infinite Country. Infinite Country by Patricia.
Oh, yes,
Engel.
yes.
Which is great. Now, here's the thing. I just finished reading a very, very long galley, 600 pages, that I did not like. And I had heard many people liked it. And so I was going to finish it, which I don't normally do. Plus, there were a lot of things in it to like, but I stuck it out. And I'm not somebody who sticks out things, but I did. And I felt exhausted and abused at the end. And all I ever read are galleys. So I thought, I am going to reward myself, and I am going to read a book that I didn't read last year, that I missed, that I deeply regret, but I never have, you know how it is, you never have time to go back. It's like a rushing river, right?
Unless you put it in your book club list, because that's what I do. Is if I'd missed it, I go back and people keep saying, read it. I put it on the book club list, and since I facilitate the book club,
best book to facilitate the book
2020. Circe, I didn't read it in hardcover.
Wait, which one?
Circe.
Oh, Circe.
Madeline Miller.
Love. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm reading right now, Hamnet,
of course. We're
which,
gonna go back.
Like every one of my friends, every smart reader that I know said, oh, well, Hamnet was really my favorite book of the year. So at the end of the year, I've been doing these Instagram videos to get people to buy books. I, who am not on social media and don't have a cell phone and have never seen Facebook or Instagram, make Instagram videos now to sell books. So I made one at the end of the year of the 5 books I most regretted not having read that year. And now I'm trying, Hamnet is going to be the first one. I just got Memorial Drive. That's going to be my next.
Yes, in Atlanta.
I really
Atlanta.
want to read Shuggie Bain. So yeah, those are my goals.
Okay, you've got some reading ahead of you.
Good Lord,
Um,
that's all I ever do.
I know, I know, I know, I know.
Yeah.
I think we, as booksellers, I think we know that we are always behind. Because I think that, as we like to say, people think we sit around and drink tea and talk about books all day, which couldn't be farther than the truth. But
Can I jump in there? I had
I'm
never
sorry.
read, okay, I had never read a John Grisham book, right? John
Okay.
Grisham is a great guy. He is a nice man, does not take himself seriously, uh, just warm and lovely, and a great supporter of my charity, Bink, the Book Industry Charitable Foundation. Came to the store, wanted me to interview him about a book whose name escapes me, but I read it, right? Because it was my first John Grisham book and I was going to interview him. And it was about a bookseller who drinks tea, who wears pastel suits every day. It was called Camino Real or
Oh,
something.
one of the Camino Beach, or there's a couple of the
It
Caminos.
was the
Yeah.
first one. But he doesn't seem to have anybody else working in the store. He drinks tea and he has sex with all the visiting authors. And I'm like, who has the time? Who's got the time? I was like, are you out of your mind? Do you really think that this is how he works? He was like, I don't care how it works. It's a novel. Anyway, he was fantastic. I loved him.
That is exactly what happens in a bookstore.
Yeah.
No, not. All
Yeah.
right. Well, Anne, this has been fabulous. I want to see if there's anything. I want to thank everyone for joining you tonight, because you are so beloved. I know that if you had had a chance to come visit us in April on your way to New Zealand, the line would have been out the door and down to the bakery in the corner. They would have all wanted to see you, because every time I talk books, people are like, are you ever going to get Ann Patchett? Only if she comes to Houston. So one day, hopefully, we will do that. And I just
And
want to thank you.
can I
Yeah.
just say, I don't know, both as an author and as a bookseller, I don't know what the future is going to be, because there is a big case to be made for this. So many more people can
Yes.
come. It's
Yes. It is
available.
true.
It's available
Yes.
to everyone. And although I have been freaked out about global warming for a long time, I have really thought about it since I have not gotten on a plane since March.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
start to think about, well, look, isn't this nice? I'm not eating through the environment. I'm getting to talk to you. People are home. They're not getting in their cars. They're buying books. But the only way it works is if you shop local and if you buy
Yeah.
the books
That
from
is true. That is
Willow.
true.
Yeah.
We had a customer not long ago say she was from a little town in Tennessee, in rural Tennessee. And she said, I would never have the opportunity to hear these authors speak except through the power of these virtual conversations. She said, I would just never, I don't live near any big city. And she said, this has just become a lifeline for me to be able to hear some of my favorite authors and to learn about new authors. So that is the silver lining. We have
It,
to have that silver
it's
lining.
really a moment, I think, to rethink, just to think about what the future is going to look like and how we can be more responsible and take
Yes.
better care of ourselves. And our customers have come through for us so beautifully, ordering their books from us. And
Right.
yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see if it works.
We've been very lucky too. We've been very fortunate, and for having such a wonderful customer base, both not just in Houston, but all over the country and
Yeah,
actually all over the world. And I've learned all about shipping all over the world, which I never thought I would learn how to do, but I have. So there. Well,
that's
Anne, it's been a great evening, and I love meeting your dog. say hi to your mother.
I will.
And we will meet again, I'm sure. I promise I won't stalk you.
I would
Even
look
though I do.
forward to it. So thank
All
you for
right.
your time and for
Everyone,
doing
thank you.
this.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anne. Thank you all the attendees. We appreciate it. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.